I was rewatching RWBY, and with each volume during the Beacon arc, I just kept on noticing something. RWBY and Cinder kept on appearing next to each other. So I started thinking about how much Cinder hates RWBY, and then it hit me. These two have actually never fought. Yet, it's been teased in 2 out of the 3 openings of the Beacon arc, and they almost fight a few times. And of course, later on, Cinder got partially vaporized by RWBY. But these two, despite Cinder showing so much hatred for RWBY, and RWBY loathing Cinder equally, have never actually had a full fight. Volumes 2 and 3's OPs both tease a sequence of these two fighting. Volume 2 showcases Emerald, Mercury, Weiss, and Yang all fighting each other while RWBY and Cinder go at it. So watching this, you would really expect them to fight. Volume 1 they didn't get an opportunity to besides the night of the Dust robbery. Volume 2, despite hinting at it, a fight doesn't occur. If they wanted to do one, we could have gotten another scene where Cinder is doing the tournament qualification and she has to fight against RWBY, just like how Mercury and Pierre had their fight. So then, as I'm watching Volume 2, we get the infamous dance arc where RWBY and Cinder fight. Almost. Kind of, not really. And then that's it for the volume. Now, I want to make this very clear. This fight isn't close at all. Cinder is beating RWBY, especially in the Beacon arc, 10 out of 10 times. So as I'm getting close to volume 3, and the OP teases it again, I'm like, oh cool, they're actually gonna fight. They're really going to build up this rivalry between these two characters. Cinder being our main villain and RWBY being our main protagonist. But no, now what they do is give Cinder a motivation for wanting to kill RWBY by doing this to her. And with Cinder killing Amber, leading Pierre to go up to the tower, which inevitably causes RWBY to watch her death at the hands of Cinder. Oh, and how can I forget? Cinder formulated a plan that got RWBY's friend Pierre,
hello again,
to turn RWBY's best friend Penny,
salutations,
into quarters. It's safe to say that these two have very good motivations to kill each other. Okay, so now we're actually getting somewhere. Volume 4. One of Cindy's opening lines is her asking what about RWBY. She has to run it back with her, but Salem of course has other plans. On RWBY's side, she constantly sees the effect of Pierre's death all around her with Team Juniper. John being up all night playing her videos, Nora and Ren putting reminders of Pierre on their outfit, and of course, John noting the remains of Pierre's armor into his. RWBY is constantly reminded of Pierre's death, and this can very well fuel a person's anger. When Tyrion shows up and starts yapping, RWBY gets pissed when she thinks that the queen that Tyrion speaks of is Cinder. Just the illusion of her name causes RWBY to react, visibly angry, clutching her weapon. RWBY hates this woman. At the end of the volume, RWBY writes on how they still have to push forward for the people that they haven't lost. Cinder being responsible for 2 of her friends' death and her headmaster. While Salem is the orchestrator, Cinder is the executioner. There's one more scene in volume 4 regarding Cinder, but I want to talk about that a little bit later. In volume 5, Cinder's first line is asking if RWBY is with Crow in his group, and she gets openly frustrated when Salem doesn't want to just outright kill RWBY. RWBY is living in Cinder's head 24/7. She wakes up every morning with a fresh cup of hate as she looks herself in the mirror. Well, as clear as she can. Meanwhile, RWBY has been focused on training, improving herself, and others around her, but we can still tell that the death of her friends have impacted her, taking on Penny's signature combat ready, motivating Oscar to push through the hurdles of saving the world. Kira was one to never back down. RWBY won't either. Fast forward to the Battle of Haven. Cinder actually takes the initiative and blasts RWBY. Her specifically. I will say this was absolutely on site. RWBY was not prepared for this, and unfortunately, I wish this continued. Fight breaks out, John gets all emotional, rightfully so, and Cinder does not care at all, which makes perfect sense. She doesn't care about John. John hates Cinder. Cinder doesn't even know who he is. So he charges at her, and RWBY is about to go in and help John, but is pulled back by Emerald, which I like. Emerald sees Cinder about to get jumped and uses her chains to pull her back. What I don't like is how long this takes. We've seen RWBY go at such high speeds before, she could have easily gone past him here. Okay, so as I'm rewatching this scene, bro, RWBY literally turns around. Just go over there. Just go over there. You already turned your back on the fight. Just go over there. Cinder continues to tour with John, while RWBY, I don't even want to talk about it. But just like how John got inserted into this fight, let's talk about him and Cinder. He has every right to be angry, but bro has to move aside. I see this all the time that Cinder and John and RWBY and Salem are rivals. No, why can't RWBY have 2 antagonists? She's the main character of the show with a huge cast. While the villains make up a small percentage of it, it should still be considered. I mean, we see this later on, but Cinder and John? Even in this fight, John surprises Cinder. Remember how I said that there was one more scene with Cinder in Volume 4? Yeah, let's go back to that. It's Cinder training or getting her anger out. And who does M show? RWBY. Like I said, RWBY is on her mind 24/7. Not John, not Rin, not Nora. I mention these two because Cinder cares about all three of them equally. Not at all. Cinder should have just pushed John away. It wouldn't have taken much force, let's be real, and traded with M to fight RWBY. And there's no way that this little chip is enough to cause Cinder to loathe John as she does RWBY. She got cocky and she got caught, which is what she does best. Volume 5 is many things, but I'm really disappointed that RWBY and Cinder's rivalry kinda took a nosedive here. Right at the end too. I mean, she fired at RWBY in the opening shot. She had enough fire to blast all four of them, but she specifically chose RWBY. I have absolutely no problem with John assisting RWBY in the fight with Cinder. There's no way that RWBY can actually take on Cinder alone in a fight, unless Cinder's just actively throwing. In fact, I actually like the idea of RWBY and John versus Cinder. 2v1 fights in animes are always a treat to watch, especially when the duo is the underdog. And Cinder has incredible powers. I still love the Crime versus Amber fight because it shows the scaling of the maiden powers and it's awesome. Amber, despite being a new maiden, is capable of all of this. But this pairing of John and Cinder just never sat right with me. She also goes on to, impale Weiss, which doesn't really get brought up again, but, if I was RWBY, I'd still be mad about that now. Volume 6, we pretty much just see that Cinder still hates RWBY and wants her dead. Knowing that she failed Salem, she's hunting her prey as she knows that that's what she needs to do in order to redeem herself in the Queen's eyes while getting their relics. RWBY, on the other hand, is dealing with more upfront problems that take priority. We don't get anything with them until Volume 7. But 7 volumes and I still can't say that they fought or even skirmished or just yelled at each other. At this point, just talk trash to one another. I'll take anything. I'm starting to think that they're not gonna fight. RWBY continues to be a target for Cinder, albeit she has Neo now and is using her as an execution tool. She's trying to have her cake and eat it too. It's a win-win if RWBY is dead and she gets the relics. However, once they finally confront each other, RWBY actually locks in. Look at RWBY's gaze. It was on sight and she was ready to vaporize Cinder. She flashes her silver eyes, Cinder was hurt, and she booked it. Can't blame Cinder, she was not in a good situation. Okay, but quick question. Silver eyes, do they harm other people? Cinder got vaporized on top of the tower before she had her grim parts, but RWBY uses them right next to Weiss, Winter, and Penny, and they all seem fine. I'm just gonna assume that RWBY used a large concentration of her power. Okay, well, I can't really say that she used her power, it kind of just activated on her own from her emotions, so. Or does this line from Salem have anything to do with it?
It is because of the maiden's power.
Volume 8. Oh man. Cinder once again showcasing how much she hates RWBY once the maiden powers, with RWBY being focused on the bigger picture. However, the finale of Volume 8, Cinder and RWBY are finally in the same vicinity, ready to fight. Surely nothing's gonna get in the way of them fighting this time. Okay, I forgot. Cinder finally turned on her brain and pushed her revenge aside for the mission. Yeah, they're never fighting. The ducking is crazy. Was RWBY's objective to fight Cinder during this battle? No, it wasn't even supposed to be a battle. Was it Cinder's objective to kill RWBY? Yeah, it was, but her main objective was the relics. But she's been fixated on killing RWBY since Volume 4.
And you should have never been born.
Oh, and there it is. For some reason, their paths just can't seem to align when they actually want to fight. In universe, this is actually a big one for Cinder. But we all know what happens. Maybe whenever RWBY comes back, maybe they'll fight in Volume 13 or something. I don't know, it feels like RWBY should have had a big fight with a big villain by now. Volume 1 and 2 is perfectly fine that she didn't have one. Volume 3, she fought Roman, which I liked because he was a minor villain that RWBY had encountered multiple times before. Volume 4, there is the Tyrion fight, but they literally had never interacted before that. Volume 5, she fights the off-screen allegations. Volume 6, Cordovan. Volume 7, the Aesops. And Volume 8, Neo. Cinder's gotta be next in line, right? I hope so. I really like RWBY and John, but maybe we can get Team RWBY versus Cinder. I really love the Team RWBY fights. Volume 9 was so good. Let me know what y'all think. Will they ever fight, or should RWBY just focus on Salem?